Look around you. So much of our modern world is new. New ideas, new buildings, new narratives. And that's great. Change is necessary for progress. The whole world gets it. So how is it possible that despite all this progress, we still learn in the exact same way our grandparents did? Our education is evolving so slowly. But why? What if your education could evolve and improve as quickly as the world around us does? What if your education was designed to help you discover who you really are? If students were created like co-creators instead of just products? If there was a space meant to build connections between teachers and students? A place where safe space doesn't mean you'll be shielded by censorship. Where liberty isn't just what you learn, but how. Your education should keep up with the rest of the world. And now, it can.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NGA Talks. To those people online, thank you for joining us today. My name is Katarina Hall, and I'll be your host. So, NGA, Next Great Adventure. Some of you know what it is. Some of you might be wondering, what is this event about? What is an NGA? Well, let me tell you a little bit about that. Once upon a time, there was 9 gritty entrepreneurs. They chose to move miles away from home to Madrid. Mind it that it was in the middle of a pandemic. And they immersed themselves in Acton MBA at UFM Madrid. Here, they tackled some of life's biggest questions. Who am I? Where am I going? How do I choose? Our scholars have wrestled with pressing questions. They have dug deep into their gifts and passions, and they are ready to declare their next great adventure to the world, all while surviving 100-hour work weeks. Let me tell you a little bit about how this event is going to work. This event is going to be divided in 2 parts, and we'll have a short intermission between them. After each of our students' presentations, you will have 5 minutes for Q&A. For those of you online, please write your questions in the comment section, and we'll be reading them. For those of you who are here, there's feedback forms on your chairs. Please fill them out. There's one for each one of our students. And once you're done, you can put them in the bulletin board in the back. For those of you online, we will be sharing a link corresponding with the feedback form. And for now, let me invite to the stage the director of Acton MBA at UFM Madrid, Javier Pareja.
And thank all of you for coming. Thank you everyone who's watching. We have people watching from Israel, from different cities in the U.S., Austin, Boston, in California, Guatemala. And we're just really, really happy to be having the first NGA Talks ever at UFM Madrid. It's a very special year. It's UFM's 50th anniversary. It's also Acton MBA at UFM's 10th anniversary. And it's the first year we're launching this in Madrid. So we couldn't be more excited. I want to thank some people. Thanks Arturo. He's the director at UFM Madrid, and he believed in Acton since the moment we saw it. We actually met having some Tex-Mex food in Austin. He came to observe a couple of cases, and immediately thought this is an amazing and really unique program that needs to come all the way to Europe. Right. So thank you, Arturo. I want to thank Hugo Diaz. He's been behind it. Hugo, you're watching. It's been an incredible support for the team put together over the years. And I want to thank every Acton teacher, the ones that are visiting, the ones that are local and getting started. We couldn't do this without you guys. This is the reason the students are here. They want to make real entrepreneurs, and you guys taking time out of your day to really master the Socratic method and teach them how to learn, make money, and live a life of meaning is life-changing. And Tim, I want to thank you as well. You're an amazing coach in this process. And I know you're watching right now from Austin, so thank you for all the hours and all the amazing and difficult questions you made everyone go through. And last but not least, I want to thank every single one of these 9 pioneers. We wouldn't be here tonight. We wouldn't be doing any of this if it weren't for you guys believe in this. And then one of the hardest years to travel, as your visa process and experience coming here have shown, you decided to believe in yourselves and complete the process you had started. And I'm convinced that's because we know you can do great things, and we are excited to support you in that journey. So with that, this is your night, and we're just super excited to hear your stories. So I'll let you again with Katarina, and we're ready to get started.
I hope you guys are ready to hear some wonderful talks. So help me welcome to the stage our first talk of the evening, Davis Lunford.
Okay, thank you. I'm the first up with a new mic, so I'm going to give you permission, Issa, to interrupt me if anything online isn't working like it should. So if you haven't guessed from my accent, and I'm not from Spain. I'm from a dry, dusty town in West Texas. There are no trees. The land is so flat that people joke you can watch your dog run away for a week. I had a guy tell me one time that it's so flat, if you look hard enough, you can see the back of your head, which that one made me think a little bit. But picture this landscape, okay? No trees, dry, dusty, flat. And then imagine how surprised my friends and family were when I told them that I was going to build a 14-foot sailboat. The fact that I didn't know how to sail didn't really increase their confidence, but I built that sailboat because I wanted to share the experience with my sister Kate, who was 11 years old at the time, and with my grandpa, and because I like building things. So I thought the process would take a month. It ended up taking a year and a half. We worked on that thing on the weekends, slowly but surely, and we saw it take shape under our hands. So when you're building a sailboat on your own, you have to interface with every piece of the design, right? You have to know what it is, how it works, and you have to make a decision on how to build it. And you have to think about how that decision is going to impact the way the boat actually works once you get it on the water and it hopefully floats. I love building things. I loved building that sailboat. I love the creative process. I love the design process. I liked it in the boat, and I like it in you name it. I like projects around the house. I like art, architecture, design. Anytime there's a creative element or a design element, my light bulb just goes off. So another guy who likes the creative process is a guy named Ed Catmull. And Ed, when he was a student at the University of Utah in the 1970s, he liked building things with computers. That was Ed's thing. And Ed decided that he was going to build the first full-length feature film that was completely computer animated. So when I decided I wanted to build a boat in the desert, folks thought I was crazy. But think about Ed, right? This is the 1970s, and he's going to build a computer-animated film. Before Ed could build the computer-animated film, Ed had to build computer animation. Ed worked on this for 20 years, and then Ed and his team at Pixar debuted Toy Story. And after the wild success of Toy Story, Ed said he didn't know what to do. He had all this creative energy that he had poured into Toy Story, and he didn't know where to go next. And Ed decided that he was going to use his creative energy and he was going to pour it into his business. He was going to make Pixar the best business that he could. That is really cool. Because the same creative energy that Ed loved and that he used when he was making Toy Story, the same creative process that I love and that I used in that boat, it's useful in business. How cool is that? So how do you build a good business? Well, that's a question that's fascinated me for a long time. And so I think back to a time in my life when my desire for kind of the creative process in building physical things and my desire and fascination with how to build a good business, when those two things were both present, was a summer after my freshman year in college. And I spent that summer living in a one-bedroom cabin on my grandpa's farm. And my routine during that time was the same every day. I woke up and I would exercise, and then I would eat a good breakfast. And at night, I would eat a milkshake, and I would watch the Dallas Mavericks play basketball on their way to winning the 2011 national championship. But in between those, the morning and the evening, I did mainly one of two things. I was either woodworking, building things that I loved, or I was reading books on business, trying to understand how to build a good business. I read books like The Great Game of Business or The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, books I'm sure you all know. I read biographies of successful businessmen, all trying to answer this question: how do you build a good business? That same question, how do you build a good business, is the reason I'm here at Acton. I want to learn how to build a business from the best builders, from people who have built things really, really well, the Acton teachers. And so as I've gone through Acton and as I've gone through this study process, what I've realized is not all businesses look the same, just like not all boats look the same, right? There's great big ones, and then there's my little bitty 14-foot sailboat. So what you have to do is you have to think about what your business is designed to do. You have to think about the context of the industry you're going into, who are your customers, who's your competition, and then you have to tailor every part of the process to work together within that environment. So you have to think about how you hire, who you hire, what incentive systems are you going to put in place, what are you going to measure, what are the most important things for your business to get right. And so as you think about how to answer those questions, it's a building process. And I've tried to bring that building process to my current job. I work in an oil and gas company in Midland, Texas. And over the past 2 years, I've worked on a fun creative project where we created this system to store extra gas that we produce in old wells in the area instead of releasing it into the environment. So this is a new process that hasn't been done before. And one of the hardest things about that process was actually getting the federal government to rewrite the rules so that they would allow us to do this thing that they had not thought of before, right? So that process took about 2 years. And at almost the end of that 2-year process, I was talking to the state director of New Mexico, and she said, "Davis, I know this is frustrating. I know it seems like it's moving slow by your standards, but it's moving at warp speed by government standards." 2 years into the process, warp speed. And that's when I realized, okay, I got to get to a more creative environment. I got to get to a more entrepreneurial environment. So how do I do that? Well, my business has an office in a little town called Weatherford, Texas. And this office exists kind of under the theory that all of the engineers throughout the country are really overworked. And they have these projects that they'd love to go do, but they don't have time. So the office in Weatherford exists to take some of those projects and work on them. The problem is this office has declined over the years. Folks have retired and moved out and now has less than half a dozen employees. And so I made a pitch to my employers before I came to Acton. I said, let me go get my MBA. Let me learn how to build a business. Let me learn how to identify and solve a customer need. And then I'll go to that office in Weatherford, Texas, and I'll bring the creative process that I love there. And so when I do that, there's going to be a few key things that I need to get right. Just like when you're building a boat, just like when you're building a business, just like when you're building a deck outside of your backyard, there's a few things that you need to get right, more than anything else, things to concentrate on, right? So in this business, one of those things is how to prioritize projects. So in a free market, usually the customer tells you how bad they want something by how much they're willing to pay for it. My customers are engineers in other divisions. They're not actually paying me. I'm a service center. So a big question on my mind is, how do I prioritize projects? How do I pick from the hundreds of projects that are out there to go do? So I do a lot of my best thinking in the shower, and I've spent a lot of showers on this one because I know it's important. And it's the next question that I'm addressing while I'm here at Acton, but it's one of many questions that I'm going to be addressing as I go build this business, because that's what the build process is. It's asking and answering questions. So in building anything, what I've seen that I'm not good at the stroke of genius that allows you to see what the finished product is going to look like. Some people may be, but that's not me. So what I've learned to do instead is I just compensate for that by looking at a ton of examples. So for instance, for my boat, I analyzed how other people had built boats and what worked and what didn't. And before I even bought a board, I had a notebook, right, of all these design cues and all these things that I knew I needed to concentrate on. So that system is the same in business. That's why we're at Acton, is because we do case studies and we look at hundreds of examples of what's worked and hasn't worked in business. That's why you read business books. You learn from other people's examples. One of the best ways, though, that I've seen to learn is from hearing the stories of business people who have built successful businesses, people who love business. That's one of the most information-dense ways to figure out what works and what doesn't work when you're going to go build a business. So I've employed that process before Acton and during Acton. And what I love to do is just like I did with that design notebook on the book, I write those things down. I distill all those lessons and I put them into a manual for things to think through going forward. And so that's the process that I want to do going forward after Acton. I want to talk to successful business people and just hear their stories. The more stories you hear, the more you understand what works and what's going to work in your specific context. So if that's you, I want to talk with you. I want to hear your story and understand what works. And in that way, the process of building a business, even though it will be really difficult, like anything is the first time, it's the same process that I've done throughout my life and the same process I love so much, the building process, the creative process, the design process. So with that, I want to thank a few people in the room. I want to thank Javier and Arturo. You guys built something, right? You built the UFM Madrid program, and I'm so thankful you have. I want to thank my classmates for challenging me in class and in our study groups, and I especially want to thank the teachers for challenging me, because business is the process of asking and answering questions, and they ask some hard questions here at Acton. And then I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight. Thank you. We have some time for questions.
Thank you. So now it's the time for Q&A. If you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you. Any questions?
Did the boat ever float?
It floated. Yes, I was nervous. Very nervous. Good job. Thank you.
I'm not quite sure the business prospect that you're coming up with. Would you detail that a little bit more?
Yes, ma'am. Yep. So the business that I want to go work in and really build is an engineering service center for the oil and gas company that I work for. EOG Resources is a big oil and gas company. We have offices throughout different divisions. And I know that the engineers in each of those divisions are too busy. They have a list of projects that they know would bring value to the company, but they can't work on them because they're chasing whatever's next and those things are in the back burner. I know that because that's my current role. I'm an engineer in a division with a list of things I wish I could go work on, but my to-do list is too long. So this business in Weatherford, Texas just pulls a few people out to concentrate on the highest rate of return projects. And they have some resources there, some testing resources, and so it exists to basically just pursue the coolest, biggest impact projects throughout the company that other folks don't have the time to work on. And it's a great environment to go build a business because it has all the stability of, a Fortune 500 company. I have a lot of leeway, but it's still the entrepreneurial process, right? It's figuring out a customer need and going and solving it. Does that make sense? Yep.
We have another question online from Samantha. She asks, just as you have been hearing stories and writing down other people's learnings, how are you writing your own story and learnings for future people you may inspire?
Oh, that's a great question. So one formula that I love, I know a guy who's really good at telling stories from his own life. And he has a little formula for telling stories that he got from a book. I forget the name of the book, but it doesn't matter. The formula is, I used to think this, then this happened, now I think this. So if you can distill lessons from your own life into that formula, it's so valuable, right? Because things are happening to all of us. And we're either going to learn how to think better as a result, if we pause and kind of chronicle something according to that format, or we're just going to move on. So that's kind of my formula, Samantha, for how I record my own story in the lessons learned.
We have another question from someone online. Christina asks, how or what is the first thing from what you have learned in Acton that you will use in the project you want to pursue?
Oh, great. So the first thing that I'm going to learn at Acton, this is broad, but I'll give you a little insight to the Acton process. And the Acton process is every day we look at several cases, or they're examples from real businesses of issues people have faced. And you approach that case through a standard series of questions, right? Anytime you enter a case, you're going to ask the same questions. They call those list of questions frameworks, and they help you understand what the protagonist of the case is going through. The idea is that you do it over and over and over, and you do it when you're well rested, and you do it when you're sleep deprived, so that by the time you get into a real business, they're not automatic. You're not pulling out the chart and saying, okay, question number 1 I need to ask of this business is, who is the customer? Question number 2 is, what's the competitive context? You do all those things instinctively, and you key in to what's going to be most important. I was going to say most or least important, but you're going to key into what's most important in that given scenario, right? So that's my answer. And my goal is that that process is automatic. If it's not, it's still valuable. Pull out the list of questions, and if you relentlessly ask questions, eventually the answer to one of them is going to be really, really meaningful.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Davis.
Yep.
Please, everyone, join me in a round of applause.
Thank you.
And now, help me welcome our next speaker, Heather Crossley.
Once upon a time, there was a girl who thought she was happy. And she was. She had a loving family, and she had a twin sister that she did everything with. They would sing, they would dance, they would look for opportunities to find ways to make other people happy. And they were known shortly after as the Joy Storm. This girl went off to college where she was happy until she wasn't. She found herself walking between classes on campus, just sobbing and trying to hold back the tears. She felt this desperate need to hold to that happy, but wasn't sure how. She learned to carry tissues and eye drops in her pocket and in her purse to disguise the sorrow, to hold to that happy. She desperately looked for ways to find that again, doing the things that she used to do, singing and dancing, spending time with family, being outside, all those things that once brought her happiness didn't satiate the sorrow. And she began to break. As she broke, her trust in herself began to shatter. She began to rely on the opinions and ideas of others, and eventually abandoned her heart's intuition. And it was that self-betrayal that plummeted her into sorrow and into regret so deep that she felt dead. Now, even in this dark and cold state, she knew and recognized that she had attached from herself. And knowing that she was meant for something more, she began to look to grow. She dove into self-help books. She took leadership classes on school. She even retook classes that she liked so much to try to learn more from them. And when she graduated, not having the money to hire a coach, she found one that she liked, talked to him, volunteered her services, flew out, and worked for him for 6 months to be tutored under him, and did that same thing with a licensed marriage and family coach. She also looked for counseling and continued to try to find ways to grow and to learn and to be happy. And all these things were good, but they didn't bring her that happy. So one day, while mindlessly scrolling on Instagram, she came across a post by Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, who talked about this school called Acton School of Business for Entrepreneurs. Now, she had wanted to go to school to continue her education since she was a little girl, and she had looked at other alternatives, and for some reason, this one felt right, so she applied. And it was in this decision where she felt her heart begin to breathe again. Because of that, she found herself studying entrepreneurship in Madrid, Spain, a year later. And that program was very rigorous. It required her to choose a side, to have an opinion, and to defend that opinion, and to state that with resolution. And this was really intimidating. It was very difficult because if you remember, she had abandoned her heart and her voice a while back, and it was very difficult. So she had two options. She could either get out of the program or decide to find her voice. And that's what she did. And I am that girl. I have dug deep to restore my voice and heart's intuition. And I'm learning each day to listen to that and to honor it and to myself. And I'm learning to trust my feelings and my opinions and to confidently accept them as a beautiful part of me. I am learning that I am good. And that this self-acceptance is bringing back that happy that I used to seek. And that I'm learning to live with intention and with grace. So I stand before you today, here to plant my stake in the ground and to declare before you who I am, where I'm headed, and why that matters. I am a woman of power and of influence, and I am ready to lead and to guide other women with intention and with grace, and to receive that in their life as well. So listen, my story is unique, not unique. It's personal, but it's not unique. If we were to go back to that girl, who I was, you'd actually know her. You've seen her at the gym. You've seen her at the grocery store. You've seen her at work. And you may even have seen her in your own home. And these women, they're getting by. They're doing well. You can see their goodness. You can see their strength. But they haven't tapped into that yet. They can't see it for themselves. That's where I was. So how do we unlock that? How do we help them take that next step and tap into their strength and their goodness? Because my sorrow did not come from a meaningless life, from wasting hours doing nothing. It didn't come from not having a loving family or a loving home. It didn't come from not trying to do good. It came from that self-betrayal as I abandoned and disconnected myself from my heart. And this disconnection in women is a problem. The voices of the world reign relentlessly upon women, telling them what to think, how to dress, how to raise their children. And this problem can change. We can do something different. We can do something more. And it's time for women to step out of those shadows of limitations set by the persuasive voices of the world. It's time for women to not let the expectations of the world cause them to doubt and abandon their nobility and ability that's within their hearts. It's time for women to live a restored and joyful life of womanhood. I will create an organization that is focused on helping women fully embrace their power and purpose and God-given talents. I will create a movement of women who boldly step into their why and live it with intention and grace. But in order to do so, I need your help. You see, I actually don't know how to do that. I've experienced it, but every story is unique and different. And I don't know the best way to go about doing this. I do know that I have skills and talents that are useful in leading and creating influence. I have a background in art and music, and I've studied art scholastically since I was a kid and won several state and then international awards. I've been classically trained in voice for 8 years, and I've seen the influence and power that music has and sung to audiences, over 2,000 people. I've also had over 100 public speaking opportunities, and to audiences of from 30 to 5,000 people. And I've done online curriculum development for 5 years at the undergrad university that I studied at, and then additionally for coaches and for licensed marriage family therapists, creating online courses online for them. I've taught teaching experience in the classroom for 3 years. So I have these resources that are available, and I have this passion. But what is the best way to help this woman? So is it through education? Is it through public speaking? Is it through coaching? Is it through mentoring? Is it through art? Is it through music? Is it through a combination of that? I'm not sure, which is why I ask for your help, because I know that if minds come together, we can create great things. So if you have felt moved today, I invite you to join me on this adventure, to sit down, to have a conversation, to discuss what the best way is to move forward in creating an impact for these women. I promise that with these talents and skills and abilities that I have, and with my drive and dedication, I will raise a standard, create a movement, and point the way for women to find their voice, to step into and hold to their unique power and strength, and create a change in the world, one community, one home, one marriage, one family, one woman at a time. I know that together we can make a difference and change the world with intention and with grace. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Does anyone have any questions for Heather?
Even though you don't know exactly which way you want to take this, what area is your favorite? What do you most like to bring to this initiative?
That's a great question, and it's one that I've struggled with because I have a habit of enjoying a lot of things. The thing that I'm moving forward with first, because it's something I know I can do on my own, is art and public speaking, probably via social media.
We have a question online from Carmen. She says, Heather, thank you for sharing your story with us. She wants to know, where did the disconnection with yourself come from? And why do you think that happens to women?
Yeah. So my story, my disconnection came, I want to ask a clarifying question.
Okay.
Is she asking, when did I notice it, or where do I think it came from, and where do I see that coming with women as well? Maybe she won't be able to answer it. I don't know.
What does come from? So I assume it's coming from.
Okay. My disconnection came from not trusting myself, from not recognizing or really trusting into the voice that I had. That part of that could have been literally did everything together, and not being able to differentiate between me and her definitely added to that. But I've seen this in other women as well, where there's this lack of really understanding their potential. And if they see that potential, it's learning how to really step into that. There's a quote that I like that talks about how our greatest fear is not a failure, but rather that we can become a great and powerful person. And for me, that's what it was. I recognize that I have ability to make an impact on people's lives, to make a difference, but not my disconnect came when I didn't trust in that, abandoned that, and listened to other people telling me what to do. And I don't think my case is different than others. I feel like we all, every woman, every person has something great, powerful, and meaningful that they have been sent here to earth to do. And if we can tap into that potential, tap into those unique skills, talents, gifts, and abilities that they have, and help move that forward and help them take action, people can change the world. We don't have to live a life of mediocrity, but we can make a difference. And it's shortening that disconnect. It's reconnecting that will make that happen.
So I understand that at this point you keep your mind open to all possibilities, but when you think about your idea of helping women, does your spirit go spontaneously to the Western countries or to the developing countries?
Western, because that's what I'm most familiar with. I have not spent a lot of time in other countries.
We have another question online from Ari. He asks, was there one particular moment that marked the shift for you? How might that apply to the people you seek to serve?
There was a couple shifts. One was recognizing the small moment when I was on college campus, recognizing that I have a problem. That was one shift. A positive shift was really applying to Acton. I don't know how to describe how it felt to know that this was a good thing for me and to actually lean into that. The sorrow and just soulless life I was feeling was so heavy that I really felt numb in a lot of things. And for whatever reason, I didn't know that coming to Acton was the best thing for me. And I felt that shift happen. Now that I did the Acton On Demand and that I've been here, it's become more apparent that it's been an environment that's created the perfect storm for me to choose to change. It's a very intense and rigorous environment. We don't get a lot of sleep here. And having the just wonderful support of my peers has made a big difference in stepping into that voice that was lost. And that's one reason why I'm not sure how to recreate it. I could just be an advocate for Acton and have people come here. That's another way I could do it. But how do I personally recreate my personal experience? It's a question for me, but I know it's needed.
Thank you, Angela. Well, thank you, Heather. I'm sorry. Well, there's always time in the cocktail, so you can ask Heather her questions. Thank you so much. So our next speaker today is Luke Beveridge. Welcome him to the stage.
So, I've always been intrigued by the world. As a boy, growing up, I loved exploring, learning, trying new things, and then trying to master them. I found, a wide array of talents from, art to playing 4 instruments to competitive sports such as football, pole vaulting, polo, slalom skiing, you name it, and even at collegiate levels. I was always very social, well-liked, had a lot of friends, endless lists of hobbies, interests, and passions. But I always struggled with trying to find what my true passion was. And despite all of these talents, life wasn't always so peachy. Right before my senior year of college, my mother passed away. And watching my mom succumb to cancer was easily the most traumatic event that I've ever experienced. I lost my advisor, my supporter, my number one fan. And before even having a chance to come to terms with what that would mean for me the rest of my life, disaster struck again. A couple days after the funeral, I was riding my motorcycle and I hit a deer going about 50 miles an hour with no helmet, just a shirt and shorts on. Fast forward, that wreck left me with 2nd and 3rd degree road rash on a quarter of my body. Had busted open my head, ripped open my chin, multiple stitches, broke my nose in 5 places, had a hole where the right side of my lip used to be. And 3 weeks after that, I found myself starting my senior year of college. Unfortunately, having to wrap myself up in gauze every day and barely being able to walk. And now feeling sorry for myself and, complete lack of motivation with my new overall pissed off attitude towards the world. I started skipping class. And I soon found myself falling farther and farther behind. And before I knew it, I failed out completely, all F's across the board. But I started again in the spring with new hopes for, a new chance. But the motivation and the lack of focus led to results that were the same. Straight F's all over again. Unfortunately, this time I got kicked out of business school and I couldn't repeat these classes for a 3rd time. So I couldn't believe the new situation I was in after, having straight A's in all AP classes in high school, an SAT score in the 98th percentile, a full ride academic scholarship to Louisiana State and honors college. It's now being kicked out of Texas State, where I'd transfer to be closer to home. It seemed like I was running out of options. I definitely wanted to quit and see what else I could really do. My only choice was to spend another year taking elective classes to build my GPA up, since I just obliterated it, in order just to get back into business school. So contemplating this decision, it started to seem like I really was running out of options, but something inside just wouldn't let me do it. I knew that I had to, see this through. I knew I couldn't let down everyone who believed in me, and after everything that I'd, dedicated my life to before this. So I went back to school. I took these elective classes, made my grades. I got back into business school. It took my remaining 18 hours and I graduated. Straight A's, success, and I got my degree. And as simple as that may sound, just to get an undergraduate degree, I'm actually eternally grateful for the experience I had and what I learned from it. Not giving up when all odds were stacked against me and overcoming these obstacles, really led to a new confidence in myself. I can truly achieve anything. And I also realized really what my only problem was, and that was just losing focus and motivation and determination. So for the future, I know that I can get past any obstacle if I set my mind to it and commit. In the years since college, I found the world that I've been living in to get increasingly boring. Although I've found a lot of success, in my financial career across a number of different industries, from mortgage to energy to high tech and semiconductors, I realized that I was not passionate about what I was doing anymore. And one day I decided enough was enough. It started to seem like my corporate job was becoming more like a prison cell. And I knew that I had to take my talents elsewhere and do something greater with my life. And that's when I, discovered the Acton School of Business. And I applied, and next thing I knew, I was packing up my cubicle at AMD and found myself on a flight to Madrid the next morning. And since then, I've found a lot of clarity. I've realized that I've had to focus my energies into a passion. And I also learned how to be disciplined and to organize my life and to now chase a greater success. And I discovered that I can also use my talents to truly do something great. So I decided to utilize these talents along with newfound skills, in time management and valuation techniques and a deep understanding of business to find a new direction in my life that would lead to my success. And I then realized what my passion was, which would allow me to monetize my creativity and analytical skills. My dream is to transform the way we live by getting creative and thinking outside the box. I have sights one day to build cost-effective, innovative living spaces that transport renters and home buyers to the homes of their dreams by combining landscaping and water features and architectural design. Although a self-proclaimed visionary, I'm not a dreamer. I realize that there are costs and returns that must be considered, but I think there's a way to maximize subjective value and to put an objective value or objective price on it. This will allow that more average consumers to have access to a home and a lifestyle that was once only thought possible for the extremely wealthy. But how do we go from homes of fantasy to reality? How do we go from this to this? Well, by getting creative. First, we find a good location. Next, we exploit water features and invest heavily in it. So, build a retention pond, maybe a tiled pool. Anyone heard of crystal lagoons? Let's do that on a micro level. Next, landscaping is absolutely critical and well worth the investment. Also, by strategically using concrete from the before said retention pond or pool, we then can use that to our advantage in creating foundations for these homes in the pond. Then, of course, we begin construction. We add it up. So even though these might seem like lucrative costs, I think that it's actually pretty worth it in the end. We have a couple options. We can rent these out. We can sell them. In the end, everybody wins. We get the homes of their dreams, or building these luxuries maybe more cost effective than you expect. And I believe that they do have tremendous value. The wants and needs of home buyers are becoming just as diverse as the people themselves on this planet. And I know that there are customers out there who'd be ecstatic to live in a community like this. But before I reach for the stars, I recognize I have a lot to learn. I realize I need to start on a smaller scale so I can learn the acquisitions and the permitting and the construction and the selling processes that are essential to developing real estate. Therefore, my next great adventure is to develop a quadplex in Austin, Texas. There's a high need for residential properties in Austin, Texas right now. And I'm convinced that a quadplex is also a real estate investor's dream. But I'll be honest, I need money. I need investors, and I'd love to have some guidance along the way. So I'm asking you if you'd like to partner up on this venture. I promise to do everything possible to learn the processes and do everything I can to use my knack for finding deals to develop real estate cost effectively. I promise to be the boots on the ground and to go above and beyond to make this project succeed. And I promise I'll not quit no matter what obstacles come our way. And I promise to make you a bunch of money while doing it. After this first project, the possibilities are endless. Do you want to start getting creative with real estate? Partner up with this young, hardworking problem solver, and I'll not let you down. And finally, I want to thank my family for their encouragement and always believing in me. And I especially want to thank my brother, William, for inspiring me and pushing me to go to Acton and to chase my dreams. I want to thank my girlfriend, Amy, for supporting me while taking this adventure. And I want to thank my classmates for their insights and their camaraderie, which has truly made this experience special. And lastly, I want to thank Javi, Arturo, and everyone here at UFM Madrid. Without you guys, this would not be possible, and I would not be here. So I truly, want to appreciate what y'all have done, and am eternally grateful. And thank you.
I'm sold. I want a house like that.
All right, I'll build it for you.
Thank you. So any questions for Luke? Does anyone else want a house like that?
I did have a question.
So you seem to be very, very clear in your mind. So I will ask you, after Acton, what will be your very, very next step? I mean, imagine you have finished Acton. We have had a very nice party at the very end of it. We all have our diplomas. What do you do the next day?
So, the first step is going to be learning as much as I can, and that's for sure. And I've also thought about, getting a job, maybe like with an acquisitions company, to really learn, the industry and get my, feet dirty or hands dirty, get my feet wet. And yeah, so the first thing will be gaining knowledge and then running numbers and trying to make sure I poke holes in everything before I do a single thing, risk any money. That's for sure. So it'll be a learning process. More learning after Acton.
We had another question here.
Of all the things that you're going to have to learn for this kind of venture, what profile would be your ideal mentor? Someone in acquisition, someone in construction, someone in development, someone in fourplexes, whatever.
Really someone kind of in the, development. I think, permitting, I know, is a very complicated world that slows things down, and I sure do not know anything about it. I do, want to learn. I promise I'll be going up to, City Hall regularly to get it done, but someone who knows, the process, how to go, each step of the way. Because right now, it's very discombobulated. I know there's so much that goes into this, and by no means do I have it all figured out, not even close, just scratching the surface. So we get there, and yeah, I think that's, the most critical.
What markets, Luke, are you going to be targeting?
Well, I'm definitely going to focus in my home state of Texas, first. And, I love Austin. I love Dallas. There's also places that, are close to sources of water that will be necessary for what we're trying to do. And then also it's just growing so rapidly, right now. And I think there's, a huge need for residential.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you very much. So everyone, let's give him a round of applause.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Our next speaker this evening is Peyton Lunsford.
I've been extremely blessed in my life. I've always had food to eat, a place to sleep, warm clothes in the winter, access to good education, and a little spending money left over. I'm in the top 1% of people that have ever lived when it comes to wealth. In some ways, I have more at my disposal than some of the richest people in history, like Carnegie, Rockefeller, King Solomon. I can order a sandwich on my phone and it'll be here freaky fast. Or I can fly to the other side of the world to learn about business and then FaceTime my family back home. I believe that these blessings are from the Lord, but they're a result of somebody deciding to start a business. I got my first glimpse of entrepreneurship watching my dad run a financial services business growing up, and then watching my uncle, my granddad drilling for shallow oil wells outside of a small town in West Texas. I remember driving around with my granddad to check the wells in his 1980s Ram truck. He called her Old Betsy. And Old Betsy had a hole rust through the floorboard about that big. And I remember watching the lease road go by beneath my feet as we were driving around. I really respected people like this, like my dad and family who had learned how to make a living running a business. But I never really understood the true value of entrepreneurship. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. But first, let me fast forward in my life a little bit. As I was looking at college, I chose to get a degree in engineering because I thought that paired really well with my natural ability to see a problem and then break it down into individual components so I can understand it on a fundamental level and then create a unique solution for that problem. So I graduated with an engineering degree and went to work for an oil company. And I worked hard for that company. I wanted to do a good job. And at the same time, I was looking for opportunities outside of my work to bless others. I'm a Christian, and as a Christian, I believe that I'm called to glorify God. And one good way that I can do that is to love, to serve, and to bless others. But the problem was that my work and my mission were fighting against each other for the same time and energy. My time and energy. The more time I spent on work, the more that detracted from my mission, and vice versa. It really felt like if I succeeded in one, it automatically meant that I failed in the other. And it wore me out. So I decided to go turn to business school. I thought, hey, let me get more productive at my work. And that way it'll leave more time outside of work to live my mission. So I started looking into business school and decided, hey, Acton is the most effective and the most efficient way to learn the tools of business. I became convinced of that and increasingly more so now that I'm here. Then at one point during the first semester at Acton, I was having a conversation with some of my fellow students about value creation. And I actually started to understand the concept for the first time. How an entrepreneur can buy a piece of land for $100,000, and the person that sells that land is thrilled about that transaction because it allows him to use that money to pay off his mortgage or send his daughter through college. And then the entrepreneur pays a contractor to build on that land, maybe pays the contractor $200,000. And the contractor's happy about that because that allows him to put food on the table for his family. And then the entrepreneur sells that building and that land to another person, let's say for $400,000. And that person is excited about that because it allows her a place to run her business and provide for her family. So the entrepreneur paid $100,000 for the land, $200,000 for the building, and then sold it for $400,000. So he made $100,000 on the deal as a result of his time, energy, and money invested. So who's the loser? Whose money did that $100,000, whose pocket did that $100,000 come out of? No one's. You see, everyone in that situation walked off better off as a result of that endeavor. And that's because the value wasn't just transferred from one person to the next. It was created through fair and honest transactions. Now, I'm still confused on the math on this, but I'm not really sure it is math. It may be magic. I don't know. If anybody can explain the math, I have a degree in engineering, a minor in math, and I'm getting an MBA, and I don't know the math. If somebody can, I really would love to hear, honestly. But once I realized this, the math wasn't important. It was more the concept. And I understood the concept for the first time. And once I did, that was a revolutionary discovery for me. Because it means I don't have to look for ways outside of business to serve others. I can use my business to serve others. In fact, it's one of the best platforms I have to bless and serve others. And if I hold to my values as a Christian, I can glorify God in the process. So what this means is that my mission and my business are no longer fighting against each other because now they're on the same team. So I'm learning some of those tools of value creation here at Acton. And when I get out, I'm going to put them to use right away working for a family oil and gas company in Midland, Texas. And it's kind of a startup. We're going to grow. Goal is to grow that into a stable production company. But then after that, what I'd like to do is start a model of finding Main Street businesses, nothing fancy, a barbershop, insurance agency, maybe a bowling alley, something like that. Places where the owners are skilled in their craft, but they don't have the tools to turn it from a self-employed job into a business. And what we do is, and likely they have a limited market to sell as well. So what we do is we'd offer them to buy their business, which allows them to realize some of the value that they'd worked so long and hard to create. And they can stick around if they want to, or they can move on to their next adventure. But the point is, now they have the freedom and the means to make that decision for themselves. And then we would plug in value creation tools. And what I mean by that are things like sales funnels, throughput accounting, data analytics, just the ability to stand in the shoes of the customer and understand what the fundamental customer need is. And what I love is that it combines the stability of an existing business with the upside of all those value creation tools. So it creates a relatively low risk, high reward situation. Also, it's a great place for me to use my individual skill set as an engineer to identify problems and then break them down to understand them on a fundamental level and then turn those problems into opportunities. This model would benefit the customers and the shareholders, and it would provide a place to work and make a living for people like so many people have done for me in the past. And I want to give that opportunity to other people. So what I'm looking for are entrepreneurs that have been successful at finding, evaluating businesses, and then identifying value creation tools to plug into those businesses and increase the value. And what I'm going to ask of you is 30 minutes to ask you a few specific questions and learn from your experience. And I'm going to promise you 4 things in exchange for that. The first is that I'll come prepared. I want to make sure to make the most of our time together. And so I'm going to come prepared with questions beforehand. The second is that after our meeting, I'm going to take time to identify some of the key lessons learned and record those so that I've got them for reference. The third is that I'm going to implement what I learned. And then lastly, I promise to pay that forward if somebody ever asks me to do the same for them one day. Before I close, I want to thank a few specific people. First of all, my wife for being willing to fly across the country with a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old and just stay in a place where no one speaks the language that she does. A couple of other people have mentioned how intense this program is, and that's right. But what she's doing is way harder than anything I'm doing. So I want to thank her for that. Next are my parents and family for their love and support always. I want to thank Javier and Arturo and the entire staff here at UFM Madrid for starting the Acton program here. And then more than that, just for their incredible hospitality and kindness towards us. It really, they've gone above and beyond. Thank you for that. And then finally, I want to thank our teachers. I see Jackie and Chris here today. I think Tim's watching online, and then there's several others. I want to thank y'all for guiding us and challenging us on this journey, because our learning is a direct result of both your experience and then your skill as a teacher. So thank you for that. And then last thing before I close, I want to challenge each and every one of you to identify what your mission is. Really write it down, identify your mission, and then find a way to use your business as a platform for that mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
For the value add that you're looking to bring, is it something that you want to find creative solutions for each new business, or are you looking at building out a template and then applying that to multiple businesses?
Acton tells us to take a firm stand one way or the other. I'm going to break that rule right now and say it's going to be a hybrid. There's some universal tools that you can apply to any business, and it's going to help. So one of them would be like developing, defined processes and systems for routine tasks. That way they're defined and it increases efficiency. And then there's others that aren't as universal. Like honestly, one that you'd think is like standing in the shoes of the customer. But I work for an oil company. Like my customer is each one of y'all, going to the gas pump every day. And really for any commodity, it's harder to stand in the shoes of the customer and create value there. So there's some that are universal and some that I need to get better at identifying which businesses to plug those in. And that's why I love the case process at Acton. As other people have mentioned, we go through case after case after case, looking at businesses, looking at a problem, and identifying, okay, which of those tools should we plug into this business? And I'm trying to develop that pattern recognition here by studying those cases at Acton.
Any other questions? Well, while you think of questions, let me remind you, people here and people in the audience, that if you want to contact any of our students, feel free to write your email in the feedback forms so that they can reach out to you. And that way you can help them in their endeavors. There is a question online.
Okay, let's hear it.
Ari asks, does your mission in business tie you to your faith?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's really the discovery that allowed me to get energized about my business, is because if I want to love and serve and bless others, one great way to do that is by creating value to share with others. So I've been fortunate. I've never had to go through the process of starting a business and taking that risk, but I've always had a roof over my head and food to eat because other people have used their talent and their resources to start a business and employ me. So I think if I can pass that on to others and give people an opportunity, create value to share with others. Yeah, I think that's where my mission and my business really connect.
Another question online. How will you e-myth yourself so that you can manage and support the businesses that you want to buy and grow?
Yeah, so that's one of the things I learned here at Acton. So the e-myth book that person referenced is actually when I kind of started having this idea. I thought, hey, this model can take really any business and start implementing systems and processes and kind of universal rules to take a business from that kind of self-employed job into an actual business. So that's my goal. I'm learning some of those. I'm learning those right now, and I'm not there yet. So I don't have that answer fully.
Thank you very much. One more question.
One more.
Sorry, I'm trying. So, are you thinking of your role in your project as an advisor or rather as an investor?
So eventually an investor, if I'm gonna have to need a little money to do that. So I'm gonna be an advisor, but not an external advisor. I'm gonna be in the office, and then what I'd be doing is going out, finding the businesses, finding ways and then evaluating those businesses, and then identifying the tools to plug in. One unique idea I think that I could do that is go talk to, I mentioned my dad was a financial advisor. Go talk to financial advisors and say, hey, who are your clients that are starting to think about retirement, that, have a local business that they might be wanting to exit, and kind of using that as an opportunity funnel to find some of those. So I'd be doing things like that, and then taking them from there down the process would be my goal. But eventually I'd like to be an investor.
Thank you. So let's welcome the next speaker, Michael Kenny.
What does it take to transform human potential into achievement? A lot, actually. If there was a shortcut, I would have found it, and I would not be here spending 90 hours a week preparing for case studies. But it's not easy. It takes a vision that becomes a plan, that becomes actions, that then gets driven through perseverance and grit to execution. And then finally, with a little bit of luck sprinkled out and encouragement and support from those around you, it can become achievement. Now, a lot of people hope to realize this achievement and this transformation through their job, through their career, by finding a way to show up every day, serve others, and build something great. That's what I had hoped for myself. But it's not always that simple and easy. Today, I want to tell you a little bit about my story and an opportunity that I see to help transform potential into achievement in the lives of others. So a little bit about me. Growing up, I had a lot of potential. People would tell me about my potential. They would come up to me and say, "Michael, you have so much potential." I was smart, I was creative, and I found a lot of shortcuts. I remember in middle school, in my math lessons, I hated reading the textbook. So I would skip to the practice problems and just reverse engineer them. I didn't even know what reverse engineering was at that point, but I could figure out what was going on. And more often than not, I could figure out why. Through that and other shortcuts, I started honing my skills in observation and asking why, thinking critically. And so as I continued to develop that potential, I took that to college. Early on, I knew I wanted to have a mission. I wanted to do some great impact in the world, but I didn't know what it was. I also wanted to keep my options open. So by studying business, I thought that would provide the greatest opportunity, increase my potential to the maximum, and help me find that achievement or that mission that I was looking for. I had an idea for what that impact might be. I had this concept that I could start a nonprofit organization that would take art from around the world, sell it in an online gallery, and raise money for local projects, whether it was orphanages, hospitals, or clinics. And so the summer after my junior year, I traveled to Liberia, West Africa, to do a feasibility analysis. And once I got over there, I fell flat on my face. It was a complete failure. Turns out, doing business in the third world is pretty challenging. And there are certain challenges that 3 years of undergraduate business school do not prepare you for. On top of that, my ego was at stake. This was my moment to prove to the world how much potential I had, to prove that I could do something, that I could make an impact. And then I failed. I wanted to do it on my own, and so I did. And it was the loneliest 5 weeks of my life. And so after that time, I packed my bags and came back. I didn't stop and process through why it was that I failed. I wanted to find that shortcut and skip over that difficult process. And so instead, I internalized that failure. And as you can imagine, that's not the best foot to start your senior year on. And so on top of that failed project that I tried to brush off, I started my last year, only to start failing again. I got a C in my business capstone, which isn't a big deal, but it was my first C, and my ego was still at large. This was supposed to prove how good I was at business, how much potential I really had. Then a few weeks later, I turned in my honors thesis a week late, and it wasn't accepted. Another failure. I graduated, and I started the job hunt. 3 strikes in a row, and I was already feeling out But now it came time for me to start figuring out what I was gonna do with my life. And it was tough. Those feelings of failure didn't go away, and they only compounded. You see, the job process is tough. You get excited about an opportunity, either don't hear back or get a rejection and come crashing down, and then find another one and come crashing down. And for 8 months, that was my life, on an emotional roller coaster where each time I got rejected, I felt it personally. It built on those feelings of failure and inadequacy. And it formed this cycle where each time I got rejected, it made it harder to start the next application. It made it more difficult for me to sell myself in the next interview. And I was spiraling. There was a light for me at the end of the tunnel, and I did get a job, thankfully. But it was a grueling process. And I'm not alone in that. The way that our job application process is set up nowadays is tough by anyone's standards. On the average professional interview or application, there are 250 applicants, which means each job application has a 0.4% success rate. 99.6% of people are coming crashing down if they don't have the right perspective of what that looks like. And on top of that, these feelings that they might be feeling are exacerbated by where they're going to do those job applications. If you think about it, if I'm on the hunt for my next opportunity and I need a job and I've been facing rejection, I don't want to log into LinkedIn and see the promotions that everybody else is getting, how many years they've been at their job, who just got a new job somewhere else. So I think there's an opportunity in this, because in that desperation is also the chance for somebody to pause, to look really deeply at what they want to get out of life, where they want to go, and how they want to transform their potential into achievement. So that brings us to this moment. We have a problem, and what am I going to do about it? Well, my next great adventure after Acton is to build a program to help these people. You see, after I got rejected, I realized that I didn't want that to happen again. And I started looking for the resources so I wouldn't be in that situation. Started learning from coaches, from HR professionals, business professors, so that I would be able to help myself and help others in that same situation. The program that I want to build is a web application that mixes e-learning, self-discovery, and an application tracking system to help people early in their career identify what it is that they want to do and how to get there. I want to chart it, instead of a roller coaster, to a North Star, something that they can point to and say, with each application, I'm getting closer to that. But I want to do it differently this time. This time, in realizing my potential, I don't want to do it alone. And I need your help. You see, I'm still early in this process. The next steps after this are going to be customer discovery and helping one customer at a time make that decision and see that through to the end. But along that journey are going to be a number of challenges that I am not prepared for, even with my Acton MBA. And when those challenges arise, I want to have resources, a network of people that I can reach out to that can help me, provide solutions, offer encouragement, people that can ask me the right questions. And so with your help, I want to realize that this achievement myself, but also want to help many other young professionals realize achievement in their own life. So what I'm asking for from you is to simply send me an email saying that you're following along and that you're interested in hearing about this process and that you're willing to be a resource to me when I need it. What I will give you in response is monthly updates for the next 3 months after Acton of what the progress looks like on that. And then at the end of 3 months, I'll make a decision and let you know what direction this is going in, whether I'm going to continue on or realizing that this isn't the right time for this opportunity. So you can find my information in the form online. And if you're not, you can reach out through the YouTube comments. Finally, I want to thank you guys. Already Acton has been transformational, and we're only halfway through. I want to thank the students that are in my program for challenging me. Specifically, I want to thank Jose for encouraging me to set my sights higher than I would have otherwise. I want to thank our teachers for giving and offering their insights and feedbacks and adding value to our lives. I want to thank the administration here at UFM Madrid. It's been wonderful. I also want to thank those friends that were with me in those low seasons, that even when I felt inadequate and like a failure, continued to see the best in me. And most of all, I want to thank Quinn, my fiance, who really is my next great adventure for life. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael?
Michael, is there a specific or a couple of specific areas where you think you would be helping? Is it industry specific that you're going to help people go through this process, at least initially, or is it just a general focus on the process?
Yeah, so I think mine is going to be focused on the process. And the way that I look at it is, right now it's a very transactional process that lacks a lot of empathy. And there are reasons why hiring managers can't give great feedback that's going to construct these job applicants in the future. But what I like to do is take LinkedIn or Indeed and combine it with like something a little bit more empathetic, like Headspace, so that people can dive into themselves, look for those answers of what they really want, and then process through how to track their path and chart that, and then how do they prepare for the job interviews and what skills are they going to need.
We have a question online. What promises will you make to your customers?
That's an interesting one. So right now, I only want to make promises that I can keep. So the promise that I can give is my time and the tools that I have. And so while that's not maybe an end goal, hopefully I can make a much greater promise that I can complete as I grow in this area. But right now, that's it.
Any other questions for Michael?
Thank you guys very much.
Well, these were some really inspiring talks. It makes me want to get into Acton MBA. We will now have a break. We will have cocktails and we will have tapas because we are in Spain. We will get back here at 9 p.m. For those of you that are here, we will notify you 5 minutes before part 2 of the NGA talks start. And for those of you online, there will be a counter on the screen that will let you know when you're supposed to reconnect. So thank you very much for everyone who's here. We look forward to the rest of your talks, and we're going to have a great time, and it's going to be really inspiring. Thank you. the cocktail? How were the snacks? I hope everyone in Guatemala or in the US, I hope you had coffee and crackers because it's late here. So
It's funny that you walk upstairs and see that the top of sushi.
yes, for those of you who weren't here, we did have sushi. So let me welcome you back. The Acton MBA program delivers the tools, the skills, and the judgment you need for a long and meaningful life as an entrepreneur. We take students on an adventure, from evaluating opportunities to launching a business, growing it, and finally harvesting the profits. Our scholars wrestled with pressing questions, dug deep into their gifts and passions, and are ready to declare their next great adventure to the world. So for those of you just joining us, we will hear from four students. After each presentation, there will be a 5-minute Q&A session. Those of you online can write your questions on the chat. And I want to remind you, for those of you in person, that there is a feedback survey on your seats. We need you to fill them out and put them in the board in the back. And those of you online, we will share a link with you to provide feedback. Now, without further ado, let me welcome Robert Ballack.
Coming after the break, coming back. I don't know if that glass of wine that I got will help me or not, but I hope you can still listen for a few more talks. So let's dive into this one. Would you like to have a superpower? Which one would it be? As far back as I can remember, I was fascinated by wizards. They know some special words and magical languages that they can use. And they can invoke those spells to make stuff happen. And that is exactly how I felt when I started programming. It was my first year of college, and I was just 13 years old. I was 4 years younger on average than my peers. And, well, it was pretty difficult, but that was my life. Though it got more difficult in 3 years when I had to drop out because I had to find a job to feed myself and eventually my brother and my girlfriend. And I was really lucky to get a job at a software company. I was eager and willing to take up on any task that they had for me, actually any task at all, and that's why they were pretty happy to have me. Though being 16 years old, sorry, would be pretty weird if I were 6. I realized that I really don't have any real skills. I didn't have any practical knowledge. And I had to build and rebuild my understanding of everything from the ground up every time. But here's the thing about not knowing how to do anything at all. Every challenge, every task, it kind of looks the same. It looks equally scary because you don't know how to do anything anyway. And eventually, as I kept working and kept learning, every once in a while, in the software companies, probably the same as in any other company, there are problems, there are issues, tasks that nobody knows how to solve. The more senior guys don't know how to do them. Everyone thinks they're impossible. And I was kind of used to facing tasks that I don't know how to do. So surprisingly, more often than not, I was able to take up on those tasks and to really, really pull off the impossible. And the most important thing that I learned from that was that you just need the right tools. You need the right tools, and you need to find them, or maybe you need to create them, to define your problem, to reason about it, and to think about it from different perspectives. And what other tool for thinking we have than language? With language, we look at problems, we talk about them, we think about them. And language is basically Lego for thinking, for reasoning, for generating ideas. And there are all kinds of languages. There are written and spoken languages. There are languages like math. And of course, there is programming. There are programming languages. And there are all kinds of them, different programming languages. And every one of them gives you a unique perspective, a unique way to look at your problem, to think about it. And there is, or there can be, a programming language to really think about any problem. And maybe not just in software industry, but in general. And here's one story for you. I was working for a software company, and I was leading a team of 5 people. We were doing highly customized, very specialized development for every single customer. They were business customers, enterprise software. And at some point, my director comes to me, actually calls me, and says, well, we expect 3 times more customers next year. How many guys do you want to add to your team to handle the load? And by that time, I was no longer 16, and I was thinking of myself as a cool engineer. And cool engineers don't solve problems by adding more people. Cool engineers solve problems with technology. So what I decided to do is to create a new programming language, to create a new language that would somehow magically boost the productivity, the efficiency of my team, so we can handle the load just by improving the technology. And well, in my team, nobody knew how to create languages. We didn't know anything about it. But we worked evenings and weekends, and in 3 months, we actually had a first version of language put together. And long story short, in 2 years, the company had about 4 times more customers. And in my team, there were just 3 people handling all of their specialized development. I gotta say, I'm still pretty impressed by how that played out. And well, the thing is, to me, programming languages are not just a productivity tool. Being much younger than everybody else, and also my family moved a lot, so I really didn't get a lot of experience talking to other kids. I was pretty disconnected. I spent most of my childhood in my head, really. And what programming languages gave me is what we use natural languages for, which is a way of structuring my thoughts, generating, like putting my ideas into a concrete shape that I can share with somebody else, and to communicate my thoughts, my experiences, my ideas with other people. Programming languages can do that as well, really. But here's a problem. Programming languages are pretty bad for normal people. Historically, for some reason, programming languages were built and shaped around how machines like to think, not about how people like to think. So, for instance, one of my fellow students here, who is going to give her talk in a bit, she told me a story about spending 2 days debugging her R program just looking for a semicolon when she was working on her biology thesis. And for most people, you won't even use a programming language. Why would you? They get in your way. Why would you learn one? It just not worth it, right? So imagine it was the other way around. Imagine when you were wanting your computer to do something, and you just couldn't find the right app. You could put it together yourself in 30 minutes, and it wouldn't be a difficult job. Wouldn't that be amazing? So what I want to do is I want to build better programming languages for humans. I want them to be available to every one of you. I want them to be available to biologists, chemists, any kinds of people. And just imagine what you can do with a cool programming language that you can really understand the same way you understand your own mother tongue. And imagine what real scientists can do if they had really well-suited programming languages for them. And I've been studying most of this so far on my own, because in Ukraine, you see, there is not a huge programming language community. And at this point, I feel like I'm ready to come out of the read-only mode. I just don't want to be alone anymore. I want to be a part of a community of people who are also interested in this, who share my passion. And of course, I want to be guided by real wizards, because there are real wizards in this world. And I want them to help me better understand how I can develop my skills further and how I can put them to use right now. And in turn, I, of course, will make everything that I build open source, kind of implied. But more importantly, I will make sure that all the knowledge that I get along the way, I make it as widely available as possible, because that's what I struggle with. And right now, I've been teaching for 4 years in local private school and university in Ukraine. And I will keep doing that as I keep learning myself. I like to end with a quote by an MIT professor. His name is Neil Gershenfeld. And it goes like this: if you give ordinary people the right tools, they will design and build most extraordinary things. And to me, it seems like programming languages made for humans are exactly the tools for the 21st century. And I'm going to build them. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. If you can show me how to program, I would be really thankful.
Yeah, we can talk exactly about that after the talk.
Great. Any questions for Robert or anyone else who wants to learn how to program?
Nobody? What? I thought I did a great job, honestly.
You did do a great job.
Thanks, Nate.
You mentioned biologists and chemists. Is there a specific group of people that you like to start building a program language for?
Yeah, for sure. Normal people. Non-software scientists. Because, well, as one of my mates, Jose here, he pointed out to me that there's a thing called industry bottleneck. And we kind of agree that for software industry, difficult programming languages are a bottleneck. But it's much wider than that because, well, we all use computers right now, every one of us, every day. So it's more than an industry bottleneck for software guys. It's a bottleneck for normal people. So actually, I'd like to begin with by creating languages that are actually well-suited for just regular guys, like, you know, non-technical guys, non-engineers, non-math people, normal people. Yeah, because somehow they managed to learn like nature languages. Every one of us knows at least one. Well, you're from America, you know what I'm talking about. But I feel like programming can be just as easy as learning a normal language. Yeah. And for me, it's actually important that it's not just that computers will understand you, but other people will understand your ideas better through your programming as well, because that's how it is for me.
Thank you.
I was very surprised that Jackie wasn't the first question, somehow.
Hey, great job. I want to get clarity. Is this, it sounds like an incredible deal. Is this a business endeavor that's going to generate revenue? If so, how? Or is this more of a mission to benefit society?
Right. Actually, I think you were the one saying that you somehow find the magical way to put together, to marry your passion and your mission with your business ideas. So for me, I'll lean more towards the benefit for society, because I see this not as a business opportunity for me right after Acton. I see this as something that I'll be working on for 20 years, 30 years, I don't know, for sure. Because, you know, creating languages is, well, it's not 3 months as I did it back then. Probably it's going to take more time. And as I was talking to one of my absolute icons, whom I invited to this talk. He is not able to participate, but we agreed to talk later. And in the exchange, he's a professor at Brown University. He's one of the real wizards I mentioned. So in the exchange, he said that, well, I'm getting an MBA, so probably I'll be able to monetize the programming language theory somehow. But I'll be really content if I manage to improve people's lives and to give them better tools, even if I don't make any money out of it. But we'll see, you know. There's a lot of money in the world, and I'm sure that if at some point I'll need to make a little bit for some good reason, I'll find a way. So no, it's not mainly about revenue, to summarize. Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
Nice. Let's go.
So from my understanding of a world of non-programming, programming languages change often. So you can, depending on what you do, there's different languages you can learn, or sometimes one becomes outdated. So how are you going to deal with that? How How are you going to make sure that whatever you're teaching is going to stay relevant?
Great question. The best programming language ever is like 60 years old, maybe 50. It was actually the second high-level programming language that was ever created, and it's still the best one. So it's like with natural languages. Some words get outdated, and the Oxford Dictionary, they kind of update it every year with the new words, like, I don't know, selfie. What is it right now? Hype, flex. So but with the core of the language, it stays the same. It's the most important things that we used to talk about, and we still talk about them right now. It stays the same. So I don't think we use concepts like selfie and flex to really think about ideas and to generate new ideas. Well, maybe on TikTok, I don't know. But when I talk to my friends and family, normally I use more basic language that has been around for hundreds of years. I don't know, maybe even more. So in programming languages, it's exactly the same. Once you find the good concept that really is aligned with how people think, it's there forever. It's still a new industry, like software is relatively new thing, but that's what we see already. Some languages that are contrived, and they are built around how machines or technologies are right now, they get outdated. The things that are built around people, we call them really high-level languages, they're there to stay. And this is how it's going to stay for much longer, I believe. As long as people are around. Maybe we are going to be taken over by machines, and then it's game over for me, at least. But we'll see. We'll see.
Well, I hope your language stays and it sticks for a long time or forever. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Next on the list, we have Ian Sadelson.
Good evening, everyone. So what is pain? We can probably all agree that it's something that hurts. It's also a common held view that pain is something that needs to be fixed. Something that is there and we really just want to get rid of it because it's unpleasant and we don't want to bother with it. A more sensible view is to say pain is information. And why is pain then such an important topic? Well, if we take something like low back pain, that's a major global disability. And the truth is that about 90% of the people with low back pain, their diagnosis is non-specific. So we don't know the cause and effect relationships. And that is a problem. So today I'm going to talk about pain, how it relates to my own life, and also how it relates to Ouch, which is a clinic and a concept for body and pain treatment that I have co-founded in Copenhagen, Denmark. Growing up, I was a shy and insecure kid. When I entered my early teenage years, I was more scared of life than I was excited about exploring it. And I tended to admire the kind of people who would speak with a great depth, who spoke from a place of authenticity and who had a clear goal or a clear purpose of what they wanted to do in life. That was not something that came natural to me. And truth be told, I had not learned to express myself, my emotions, my beliefs, or my dreams for my life. So years later, I found myself doing a PhD in sustainable energy. I had entered into academia and thought that was going to be my path in life. And at the same time, I had become involved in this sort of endeavor that was a group of people that would meet and talk about starting a business, but were never really sort of getting around to actually starting the business. And at some point, a line was drawn in the sand, and we had to decide whether we wanted to commit our time, our money to this project, or whether we were going to quit. And most people quit. And I was in a dilemma because I thought this project was great. It was something meaningful. And at the same time, I'd spent quite some years now in academia and was sort of following that track. But, what should I do? So I found it hard to imagine, doing both, but that's what I ended up doing. So I finished my PhD in 9 months, and it was a tremendous motivation to know that I was going to do something that I really enjoyed afterwards. And I did more productive work in the last 9 months than I did in the first 2 years and a bit. I handed in my thesis and got my degree. And then I became an entrepreneur right after in a completely different field. And that was initially exciting. It was great. It was a sense of freedom, but pretty soon reality caught up, and I realized that entrepreneurship is really, really hard. That there's a lot of chaos, and this chaos has to be dealt with. Moreover, there's a lot of decisions to be made, and these decisions are always to be made with very limited information. And on top of that, we were spending our own money, and that was certainly not making things easier. So I realized that I needed to learn something about entrepreneurship. Reading books was not enough for me, even though I enjoyed that a lot. So I decided to apply for a business school. I looked around and I found this place in Texas, of all places. That was odd. And that was Acton School of Business. So going into Acton, I learned to put myself in the shoes of the entrepreneur or the customer, but to put my shoes or to put myself in that person's shoes. And that was very different from academia, where we would argue back and forth and never really take a clear stand. But it turned out to be very, very important to be able to ask the right questions, as we do at Acton, and then make a decision and take a clear stand, because otherwise there would just be internal confusion on and on and on. Acton has also taught me to apply the right tools to the right situation. And that was certainly something that's something that has brought more clarity to entrepreneurship and how that works for me. So speaking about tools, in ARTS we have something we call a body image. And a body image, that's an app we use to take a set of 4 images, four standardized images that portray the body from 360 degrees. And the reason we do this is that we wanna assess, you could say, what we call posture in common language. So essentially, we are diagnosing how tension is distributed in the body. It's what we call the connective tissue or fascial system that distributes tension in the body. And we are diagnosing this, you could say, just like doctors are using X-rays to diagnose whether a bone has a fracture, for instance. So the idea is that when you have one body image, you have a data point. You have the state of someone's body or at a particular time, at a particular point in time, right? And over time, when you collect more images, you get more data points, and you begin to be able to see patterns. And perhaps we can even begin to identify cause and effect relationships. And that's something that would be great, because that is really what we are lacking. The traditional scientific method has not been successful in doing this. So why am I important in this business? Well, I bring a critical mindset. I solve hard problems, and I bring more tempered execution to our team. And I have learned to apply the right tools to the right situation and ask the right questions. But there's a but. So I'm not a crafty entrepreneur yet. I still want to learn, and I want to learn from someone more experienced than me. And I need help. So I'm looking for someone who has experience starting business, bringing a product to market, or someone with deep knowledge or insight into the health or wellness industry. And my ask is a 30-minute meeting where I get to ask questions and learn from you and your experiences. Specifically, I want to identify what path to pursue to take our current clinic and actually scale that, or more specifically, to actually take the concept we are trying to develop and scale that in the market. That is a big question still. How do we do that? In return, I will promise my commitment to support human beings in living healthy, meaningful, and productive lives. And I'll promise to return the favor in the future to another aspiring entrepreneur in need of help. So I started out saying that pain is information, and what I want to leave you with is that pain is information that has to be understood and dealt with. And my experience is that, facing the pain can be extremely difficult. It requires courage, but really it's the only way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Jackie, do you have a question?
Just to go on, if you're looking to be a scale up, I'm assuming there's a base track record. And when you're looking to scale, is that geographically or in revenues, or just widening the concept and getting buy-in from the industry?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I don't have the specific answer to that. So right now we have a clinic in Copenhagen, and I think that sort of geographically, that's probably the area that would be most, obvious for us to focus on. But what I mean by scale is also like, we have a clinic, we could make a franchise, but we also have this IT tool, this methodology that can scale as a software, and that's really what we're trying to figure out. What we know is that this software is a new way of doing things, and we are trying to sort of validate that in the market by actually making a clinic and reaching the end users, people who have pain problems, right? Yeah.
Any other questions? Or comments? Well, you can always ask him more questions in the feedback forums, and you can reach out to him later. Thank you, Jens. For our next speaker, we have Jose Munoz.
Thank you all for being here. It's hard to go after seeing such amazing presentations from my friends here, but I'll do my part. Today, I will tell you about 3 stories. I love stories. I love to learn. So I will tell you about 3 stories from my life, where I learned from them, and I will invite you to my next story. The first story is from when I was a kid. I always, as I told you, I love to learn. I got into physics when I was really young. I really discovered it, and I binged all Wikipedia page. I then discovered rockets. I did the same thing. I learned everything I could about those topics. And finally, I went to a forum, an MIT forum in entrepreneurship, and I fell in love with business. And I didn't know what to do. I was getting into college, and I didn't know what to do until I found a person that was doing exact same thing, that was passionate about the same things I was, and was passionate about doing an impact the same way I was doing it. I don't know if you have heard about Elon Musk. So I decided to follow his path. I went and applied to the same universities he did to study the same things he did. I didn't get into the college, but I went into a great college to study physics. I started learning how to code, right? Elon Musk started coding when he was 12, so I was already running a little late. And I started doing what he did. I started trying to create big companies. I started going into pitch competitions, trying to get ideas with my friends, getting into trying to do these big business ideas, putting 13, 14, 15 hours work days while in college. And it was hard. It was hard. You don't have much time. And that's my lesson. Like being a tech mogul entrepreneur is hard. And that takes me to my second story. I was on a holiday. I went back to Guatemala during college, and I got into an accident. I got into a crash, a really bad one. I crashed into an 8-month pregnant lady. It was really bad. She's fine. I want to clear that. She's fine, and after 2 years, it's finally solved. But in the moment, it was really hard, and it had some legal implications that was really hard to face at the moment. And I had to go back to college to finish that semester. And I faced myself with isolation. I was working hard. I was doing all this stuff, but I was doing it by my own. I was isolated from the people I loved, and I had damaged my relationships because of that. And it was clear to me that I was facing a life that I didn't want to live. And I needed to face this accident to realize that. That takes me to my next story, which is during that time, I had to face these legal problems, as I told you, back in Guatemala. So I had to take a leave of absence. I took a semester off to face them. And in that time, as I told you, love to learn. And there was a need in my family's company to marketing. My family has a business coaching firm. We do strategy with companies, and we needed marketing. And I said, okay, I take the challenge. I put my savings, bought some real good online business courses on marketing, and started learning the fundamentals. And I was 3 months into my job when I was doing, I was in social media posting when I found that the OMS was declaring COVID-19 a pandemic. And I went to my dad and say, look, the OMS has declared a pandemic, COVID-19. We need to do something about it. Companies historically get really bad, really hurt during pandemics, so we need to do something about it. So we decided to do a webinar. At that moment, we recorded a video with my cell phone, put it online, decided to go do a webinar, and we were on the spot. 3 days later, the whole world got shut down, and it went crazy. Our webinar had hundreds of people. We got into the news. We got media coverage. It was crazy. And a few months later, we did a webinar series. We did several webinars. And a few months later, somebody called us. We're in Guatemala, and this is a girl from Costa Rica. She called us and said, look, I was talking to this guy. He has this business about BTL marketing, basically events, and they all got shut down for a year, and he was facing bankruptcy because of that. And he told me he was on a path of bankruptcy until one day he saw this webinar about these guys from Guatemala, Alajis, and that's my company. And he implemented the methodologies that this guy showed, and he survived the pandemic because of that. And that story, it just clicked on me. I never felt more fulfilled than that moment. And I realized I was looking for my purpose to make an impact by creating big companies, by doing huge stuff, when doing an impact for me is changing a life.
And I was doing it with the people I love. I was doing it, I was being happy doing it, and I was not alone. And that's my learning from that story. So now, sadly, as coaches, we have a limited amount of time in our schedule, and you cannot impact as much people as you want. So we decided to scale that impact through an online e-learning platform for C-level executives. And I'm here at Acton to learn how to do that. I'm here at Acton to learn the tools to scale a business. I know the methodologies, how to do them, but I like the experience. That's what I come here to ask for you. I want to learn your story, how you transform a business from being a normal business to an online business, how you manage your sales funnel, how you face all these challenges, and hopefully what mistakes you made that I can avoid. I want to hear your story, get a 15-minute coffee with you, either in person or in a call, and learn your story. And in exchange, I promise you that I will come back to you with the next story I hear, so that you can see the impact that that conversation had on someone's life. Before I get into questions, I would really like to thank everyone in the Acton community. This is such an amazing community. It's really an impactful program. Everyone here is amazing. I would like to say thanks to my family because they have always been there for me, to my sister, who is my support in life, to my girlfriend, who always loves me and comes with me on all my crazy adventures, and you guys for coming here. Thank you.
Thank you. A very inspiring story.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jose?
You mentioned that it's a e-learning platform for executives. Is there a specific topic or skill that you're teaching them?
Yes, mostly strategy, culture, and leadership for a business, but mostly strategy. Yes. Thank you, Michael. Did that clarify the questions? Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Anyone else?
Thanks for sharing, Jose. As I understand it, the timing really gave you a boost, that you guys had the resources to help deal with COVID when COVID got bad. Do you think that will keep giving you a boost in the next journey? The customers that you gained over the past year, will you continue to see benefits there?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. Thank you. We stopped doing things about the pandemic a while ago, maybe 6-8 months ago, and we were facing the same question you were having: can we sustain this growth, and can we sustain this impact? Fortunately, we have been doing webinars and series since then, and we've been having the same results so far. So I hope we can sustain that impact.
We have a question from the online audience. What sets your learning methodology apart from other online programs?
That's a really great question. We give the tools. We're not about learning as much as implementing. We give all the tools, and we try to be as open and generous about that as we can be, because we know learning knowledge is something that in this era is really easy to get. It's cheap. The hard part is finding good knowledge. The hard part is learning how to bring that to reality, and that's what we do. That's what we focus on, making it a reality that companies can put it in the DNA of their company, and then it actually makes an impact, and it not stays on the head of the people doing the course. Please let me know if that clarifies the question.
No comments as of yet, so I'm sure it did. Any other questions?
Yeah. First of all, great job. I want to ask, what is the single most important tool either you've already learned at Acton or you hope to learn at Acton?
That's a great question, Peyton. I think I'll go for two. I will not take a hard stance here. The first one, which is more subjective, is learning to make decisions. In business and in marketing, even more, making decisions is hard because you have too many possibilities. In marketing, you have too much information, and knowing what to use is hard. So being in Acton, taking the cases and having to make decisions with 3, 4, 5, 8, 12 hours of preparation from a case, it's hard, and that's something that I hope to stakes and will help a lot. The other thing that I have found really useful is the sales funnel, which is a really hard thing to figure out in businesses, how to sell. And I think that's something that has been a revelation for me, how to create a really good sales funnel that is based on the real customer you need, how to bring the salespeople that you need, and not any salespeople. That's, I think, a real revelation for me in a more technical aspect. Thank you for the question, Peyton.
Thank you. Any other questions? Of course.
Of course. I was hoping for your question, Jackie.
It's just one of those silly practical things. Is there an industry segment of the people you're reaching out to with the service, or a geographical segment, or?
Yes, there's a geographical, not so much on place, but on language. We do it in Spanish. That's the most specific I can get, because these methodologies we use have been proven to work in every industry, in every continent, in more than 140 countries, in more than 70,000 companies. So yeah, it's not very industry specific, but we do aim only for the Spanish-speaking industry companies, and even more in Latin America, because these are methodologies that are really hard to get in Latin America. There are really more mainstream in the US and in Europe, but the Latin American business community usually is a little lagged in terms of methodologies to use. Does that clarify the question? Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. Well,
We're done?
Thank you very much, Jose.
Thank you, Katarina.
And last but not least, we have Maria Paula Muñoz.
Hi, everyone. As you know, I'm the sister. So I wanted to make a question to you. Is it love at first sight real?
Yes.
Yes? Yes? Sometimes? No? Okay. Well, let me tell you, for me, it was. I fell in love with orcas at 9 years old. Like, fall in love. When I was 9 years old, I went with my family to SeaWorld. It was a family trip. And we went to a dolphins and orcas show. And when I saw them, I don't know what I felt. I just can't explain it, that it was love at first sight. So I saw them swimming, and they were big and beautiful, and I just loved them. So after the show, like you can see in the second picture, I asked to my dad, like, what I need to do to be that person that is working with them. And my dad said, well, let's go ask them. Well, go ask them. And I went there with my 9-year-old English, not good. So as you imagine, my dad asked for me. So they told marine biology. And from that moment, I knew how the rest of my life will look like. I started my career in biology in Guatemala. I liked a lot of things in biology, always marine biology, but I liked a lot of things. So I wanted to try. So I worked with insects 7 years of my life. I worked with mammals, I worked with plants, I worked with a lot of different things that are in the biology area. It's very broad. But as you know, orcas were always there. That was my first tattoo that I got in my first year of college. So I can remember where all this journey started. So yeah, orcas were always there. It's going to be there for the rest of my life. So I wanted to start getting into the marine biology area because in Guatemala we don't have much. So I spent doing insects, mammals, but I wanted marine biology experiences. So I went with my professor to look for dolphins, whales, and everything we could. I signed up for doing research in health of coral reefs. That it's the last picture. We did like measurements and everything to see how the health was. And every opportunity I had to do marine biology, I was there. Also, when I finished college, I went to Costa Rica to do a volunteer for 2 months of sea turtle conservation. And has been one of the greatest opportunities that I have ever had. Like you can see there, that was my babies. I call them my babies because I grabbed them from the eggs and watched them hatch. So we took care of them like every day. So they are my babies. And I really love them. And at that moment, I realized that was what I wanted to do. Like reaffirmed that I wanted to be a marine biologist. I wanted to do marine conservation. And as you imagine, the ocean has a lot of threats. During all this journey in school, in all the projects that I worked on, we could see all the threats that the ocean has. And that really hurts me, you know, like seeing how the things that you're passionate about, that you love, being killed, being threatened, I just couldn't handle it. It was a mix of emotions. I was frustrated, I was angry, I was sad, I didn't know how to feel. And actually, I was mad at the world because we were not doing enough to handle this situation. And you can see in this image, it's pretty clear, plastics are a very, very rough problem in this area. Also, you can see here how marine mammals die because of fish nets. So yeah, that's something that really hits me. I don't like it and I want to solve it. So to put it in a context where everything started, I started looking for documentaries, papers, statistics on what is this happening and what is happening. So for putting it in the context, we throw to the ocean 8 tons of million tons of plastic every day. I couldn't imagine how we can throw 8 million tons of plastic to the ocean every day. How? Like, where all the plastic comes from? I don't know. Also, all our synthetic clothes that we use contributes to 35% of the primary plastic that we see in the ocean. At that time, I felt really guilty and started transitioning from like fast fashion to more sustainable fashion. So to be congruent for what I love and what I like. Also, fishing nets, ropes, lines kill a lot of animals and make up to the 52% of plastic pollution in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I don't know how those happen. Like, you shouldn't get the nets out of the ocean, you know. And finally, at least 100,000 marine mammals die every year because of plastic pollution. And as you know, I love orcas, I love marine mammals, so I didn't want this to keep happening. So what I did, I applied to this university to study marine biology as a master. I wanted to do academia. I wanted to research the problem. I wanted to research what this does to the mammals, to the animals, to the ecosystems, and how I can contribute to that. I wanted to do an impact. I was accepted, but because of COVID, I couldn't go. So I started looking for what to do. I waited a lot of months trying to figure out the next step of my life. And I started thinking about business as an option. Never been into business until this moment. I was an academia girl, research, labs, ocean, diving. And there comes this time that I was researching and working in a place, and I realized business can do a broader impact than academia. Like Jens, I started moving from academia to business. So I got this job that it's Biorgani, and that's biodegradable resins. And I started looking at different organizations like the Great Bubble Barrier, the Ocean Cleanup, that does all the things that I want to do to solve this problem. So I started following them, and I realized that I was lacking one broader skill, that I was knowing business. I didn't know business, so that's why I'm here in Acton. I came to Acton knowing nothing about business. Zero finances, zero much of everything. So I started learning here, and I expect to get all the skills about business that I can have here and learn and apply it. Today we had a social case, and I loved it because it was more social. That's the things that I like to do, apply it to environment. So I realized how this can be applied to everything that I want to do. So for writing up this, I wanted to ask you a question. I lack of experience on knowing how to go through the problem to the solution. So I wanted to ask you two things. If you know people in this type of organizations or businesses, if you can give me the contact, I want to do volunteer for them so I can learn and understand what they do, how they do it, and how can I apply it later in my life, or to talk with them and see how they got from point A to point B, so I don't make the same mistakes and I can do this faster, because we need those solutions. And if you promise, or you can give that to me, I promise I will never give up on marine conservation, because if we want to solve this, it's going to be through people like us. Before finishing, I wanted to thank my family that's always been there for us. My brother, as you know, we're very close. We support each other in everything. We went to school together. My peers, they challenged me a lot. I've learned a lot from them, zero finance. We're going there. They're helping me a lot. Javier and Arturo for having Acton here at UFM Madrid, and all my teachers that are always challenging us and putting us to take a firm stand. So this is my stand. Thank you very much.
There's a lot of kids that go to SeaWorld, they go to the zoo, and they see animals, and I feel like they always think they want to become a marine biologist, and they don't. So I'm really proud, and I'm really impressed by your commitment to become one. Any questions?
Thanks for your talk. So you mentioned that you're interested in volunteering at one of these companies you see that are making sustainability work business-wise. Beyond that, do you want to work at a company like that? Do you want to start something on your own?
That's a good question. I've been thinking about this, the whole Acton program. I want to do it in two phases. First, I want to work in some place like this so I can understand how this works and do it better and recognize patterns, how to apply the Acton skills. And then I want to start something at my own.
There's a question from the online forum. What might persuade more people to help with this project?
Oh, that's a good question. If we biologists have something to deal with, is how to convince people to go into more environmental life. So the thing I've learned is we're not willing to give up our comfort because of environment. So what I've learned that can persuade people to do this is to teach them how this can impact in the world without giving up their comfort. Starting with little steps, like showering instead of 5 minutes, shower at 4. That saves a lot of water. Or, I don't know, use clothes that are more in a more sustainable brand. Consume less plastic. And those can give an impact, a bigger impact that you can imagine. Just putting that little effort and teaching that to people and the impact that they can have can transition people to more environmental life.
You heard it. Small things, big impact. Another question.
You're the last one, so they're not going to take your phone away anymore. We had a chance to talk, and I love your perseverance, and I love the enthusiasm. I just want to know if you would prefer, in a preference, if it's a nonprofit educational or developing a new line of business that would actually implement this change. So you want to be closer to the animals and the oceans and the plastic, or in a business that will lead the way to be able to save them?
Oof, that's a tough one. I want to be near the animals and the plastic and doing all the research, but I know I need to be on the other side. I need to be leading the business so I can develop that and have people get involved and do the work with the animals and the plastic.
We have another question from online. How do we make this cause important for more people?
Okay, that's another good question. Well, start by letting them know that we have a problem. A lot of people doesn't know that we actually have problems that are impacting the environment. So through education, mostly with kids, that helps a lot. People doesn't know it, but putting kids into a more environmental problems, they actually, I worked with some, and they put a lot of solutions in drawings and make them conscious and keep the next generations growing with a more environmental consciousness.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Before we end, we're going to hear from the director of Acton MBA Madrid again, Javier Pareja.
It takes a whole bunch of people to put together something like this, and I'm in this process of intensive learning. And so I just want to give a quick round of thanks. Again, starting with Arturo from UFM Madrid, who saw that program and decided to bring it here. Gabriel Calzada, Caio, the whole team here, the whole team in Guatemala, who has been incredibly supportive. They're behind the curtain, but we have calls every week, and they're super helpful. The whole team in Austin, who's flying all the way here and supporting the new team that's joining and who believed in this even before really seeing it. And this all really, there's more. There's the alumni. They're cheering for you guys. They're watching this. They're sending questions. So there's a whole community of people who believe in you. And this all started when one teacher said entrepreneurship can be taught better and was incredibly successful at teaching it. And that was Jeff Sandifer, who with the team of other entrepreneurs designed this program. And much like Robert's cause, they wanted to give incredible tools to ordinary people. And I see that the world is better off because of that. So thank you guys. Thank you, Jeff, Ed, Jack, Jamie, everybody who was involved in that initial foundation and who's made it available through the years. And thank you all for coming tonight. Gata will give some housekeeping, but this has been, at least for me, incredibly powerful. And I'm super moved and excited to keep going. I know the best will come yet.
If there is something extraordinary here today, everybody's extraordinary, but especially Javier. I want a big ovation for him because
It really means a lot to us that you all came today. It means a lot to us as a team. It means a lot to the students. And thank you to the people online. I know it's inconvenient sometimes to be online in platforms, but we really appreciate you being there. I want to remind you to please don't forget to fill out your surveys. It's really important. Don't forget that you can put it in the bulletin board in the back. And the people online, you can fill it out online. And I want to remind you also that you can always contact the students. We have their emails in the program, and I'm sure they're looking forward to hearing from you. Now, please join me once more in a round of applause for all the talks that we heard today. And while it's kind of sad for the people online, the people here are invited to another cocktail with more drinks and more tapas. So please join us upstairs. And thank you very much for joining this event.